Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. The Dirt Farmer, a cultivator of land in Arkansas, toiling in the fields with a rhythm of his own, unique, not like Gene Krupa or Buddy Rich or Earl Palmer, but a pulsating, percolating personification that set the Dirt Farmer apart from every other drummer. My guest today is a guitar player with a unique and distinctive sound that roils in his hometown of Woodstock, New York. Unlike every long-haired kid who showed up on a bus, my guest's roots are in Woodstock, before Dave Holland and John Simon, Bernard Purdie, Chuck Rainey and John Sebastian moved up there. Even before the Dirt Farmer made it to Big Pink. My guest percolates with multiple musical units going to the lush greens of Maine and the urban jungle of Philadelphia, playing guitars, mandolins, and dobros, passing on traditional roots music to future generations of big-eared people. Let the body dance, be it in Nashville or Georgia, singing for your supper with Vassar Clements, Hargus Pig Robbins, Carrigan and Tut Taylor. He returned to upstate New York in the early 1980s and connected with the Dirt Farmer, who he had once known before. When that farmer was at Big Pink with fellow artists Rick Danko, Garth Hudson, and Richard Manuel, and they played the Getaway Inn in Saugerties or some small bar in Auburn because they want to connect with the audience. It makes no difference how many amalgamations of the band there were, the peaks and valleys, the Brown album to the Blaze of Glory. My guest was part of a band that wanted to play music they wanted to play. Not trying to make a hit for the suits, but knowing that from an organic creative storytelling process, the magic will reveal itself. The music's hot and you might have to stand. Jim Weider, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, thanks, Jake. Good to be here.
You know, I really wanted to ask you how you can talk to anybody, younger musicians or just you know whatever. I was wondering how you would define individuality on the guitar. How did you develop your individual sound on your guitar?
Boy, it goes back to just really taking records. In the early '60s, everything that came out, I was just enamored with, from the Ventures to listening to James Burton on the Ozzy and Harriet show, and Hullabaloo with Steve Cropper, and all these guys. Everybody was telly players back then, and Jeff Beck with the Yardbirds. It was just constantly absorbing different kinds of music, and rock and roll was developing. I mean, I was totally into Elvis Presley when I was just a young kid in the 50s. That was a bigger kid down the road who, was always singing "Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." And I got to, and I was like, 6 years old or whatever it was, but I got to see, those guys on Ed Sullivan. It just, all that just really Pipeline, the Shantae, all that, it was instrumental music. Just everything was coming at you, and it was changing. Rock and roll was changing, and I was just totally nuts about it. And
I guess what I wanted to say, I guess this is the better question, is do you feel like you developed your individual sound on the bandstand? Do you feel like the opportunities to play live, as you continue to do today, but the propensity of opportunities to play live helped you cultivate a sound that is your own sound?
I think so, yes. I believe that. I mean, I think, cutting the story short, you learn. I had to play all different kinds of styles. I played in country western bands with, and living in Nashville with Johnny Paycheck to all kinds of songwriters. It started up here. Once I got out of high school and playing in high school bands, it started playing with songwriters that were very influenced by what was happening in Woodstock. Woodstock in the Catskill Mountains had a certain sound that the band created here, and I was a huge fan when they first came out with Big Pink, but there was other songwriters. Van Morrison was just starting. He did Tupelo Honey, and those songs were kind of, it's that Woodstock sound. It was the Happy Artie Trom and Bob Dylan.
Right.
All these people were like kind of mixing folk with blues, rock, and had that little bit of a, I call it the Catskill, the Woodstock sound, the sound of the band and the sound of Dylan and Van Morrison's early records.
I know this is, you're hitting this is the pocket of the Jake Feinberg Show, and please spend as much time as you want articulating what that sound is, because the regional sound was, you were the most appropriate person to ask about the Woodstock sound.
It really, that's what influenced me, and that's kind of how I developed it, playing with different songwriters that were here, and then of course absorbing all the other music that was going on at that time, which was pretty amazing. But Butterfield, but it was that kind of that roots, mixing folk with blues and country blues.
Yeah.
Taj Mahal was doing it on the West Coast with Jesse Ed Davis.
That's right.
Real blues. That record was kind of crossing that path with country and blues. And the band did it with really strong songs about, America. They were the first Americana band that, and that's what influenced me in developing it on stage. Was the way I learned how to do it, by playing with different songwriters and different people, and eventually, meeting Levon, and which changed my life, working with him. And
I just want to stay, I want to stay in the, what was it like for you? It's so fascinating, because I've interviewed cats that are, older than you, like Peter Yarrow, or, other guys that were, Sebastian, these slightly older than you, but everyone and their brother were, what I'm finding out in my journey is that, everyone and their brother was going up there with a guitar in their hand to play. And I'm like, I think the vibe that I got from these guys, you tell me if I'm wrong or not, it's just like Butterfield or Levon or anybody could just go into a bar, a coffee shop, and just have a drink. They wouldn't get hassled. I mean, they felt like they got their space. And you grew up there. To me, it's like that is all those guys moved there because they wanted to be there, but you actually grew up there. How do you account for that kind of groundedness?
It is true that, like those guys that come and hang out at the local Deanies at the time, and Butterfield's band, when they were off rehearsing before they go on the road, would play at the Espresso. Van Morrison or Tim Hardin would come in, and it was just I didn't have to go anywhere. For me, all the music I loved and grew up with was with these people writing great songs, like Tim Hardin songs, and the musicians that were playing with him. I was watching how people like Buzzy Featon was playing with. He'd sit in and play with Butterfield, or he was in the Butterfield band, and all these guys, John Hall, were developing their styles, and all that influenced me. And then when the band came out, I was above a bar at Sled Hill, and I heard Chest Fever, and I had never heard an organ distort like that. And I said, wow, and those lyrics, and I'm going, wow, what is that? That was like, 68 or 67.
How old were you at that time? Well, how old were you?
Probably, when did that come out? 68, maybe 17, 16.
Oh, my God. That is mind-blowing. Yeah, what is that? That's a perfect way. That's what I would have said if I was there.
Yeah, it was so unique that distorted through the organ, and then I, looked in, that's Big Pink. It was Garth, and he lives here. And that was really eye-opening. I became a huge band fan right off the bat, right then. That was it. And they were locals, and you'd see them here playing, and it just Happy and Artie Traum were here, and of course the Dylan. I always liked Dylan.
Yeah.
And it was just that was a big part of the Woodstock sound. So playing behind songwriters helped me develop how to play with somebody else and back them up and be part of making the song work instead of just playing Little Italy over everything.
Well, you say it well, man. I mean, like Hal Blaine said it. It's like you want to be. it's singing a song is telling a story, and you want to be an accompanist to that. Figure out a way to fit into that puzzle. I just, to me, I mean, Buzzy was up there. I mean, all these other crossover cats. I just cannot imagine being able to go and see that kind of raging progressive music live on a nightly basis in very small venues. I mean, that's part of the how I chronicle the show is just the idea that the visceral nature of the music was just so. I can't even imagine what it was like compared to today, where it's essentially rock palaces, and really not a lot of accessibility. When you first heard the band, did you shake hands? Did you meet them at some point before you went to South, or did you not connect with them before?
Oh yeah, because I was working when I was in high school. I was working at this stereo shop that. In high-end stereo that Kermit Schwartz, who was a real character, smoked 2 cigarettes with a big Baylock ring around his lips. He was a big, like brownstone owner in Manhattan, but he had a shop, and everybody loved him. All the guys in the band would come in and they'd bring in their latest track that they cut at Bearsville, and we'd listen to it on these Macintosh. And so that's where I met Levon, really, is way back then, Levon and Garth and those guys, when I was just in my last years of high school there, at that shop. And then after that, I think I worked there for another year or so, and I had gone out west and got an old Telecaster because I wanted one like Roy Buchanan.
Sure.
The 50s,
Wow, nice.
So I came back, and I showed it to Levon, and he dug it, and that's where I became friends with Levon way back then. But then he went off to California and did other records with the band, moved away, and
that's interesting.
I ended up going on my journey,
No, and that's when you were playing. When you got to be the late '60s, early '70s, before you went south. Did you go to Did you have gigs? Did you have gigs in New York, in the city?
Not in the late '60s, early '70s. No, I was just playing around up around here. There was, back then there was, in a little village like Woodstock, which you can go through in 2 minutes. There was like 7 bars with music was 7 nights a week, and that's the way it was everywhere in the late '60s, early '70s. Every town, every little town, so musicians could really hone their craft. It was a golden era of
yes, that's right.
And so I didn't really go too far until Ben Keith came up, a pedal steel player, and I started doing an album with Ben Keith and Billy Monday and Robert Lee, the songwriter, a guy that I worked with.
Incredible.
And Rolly Sally, and we did an album way back then, and
what was the name of it?
It was Robert Lee, and what the heck was the name? He had a name for the band, and it was quite the time. But Ben ended up.
What label was it on, though?
It was on I think it's just his own label. It was just some label that he made up, and
there were like maybe 50 pressings of it or something like that.
Yeah. Who the heck knows now?
Billy Monday. I mean, that guy was like a crazy, like psych rock session drummer. I mean, I just can't believe that you cut an album.
Rhinoceros.
Exactly. On electric. I mean, I thought maybe it was, because that was the other thing that, what was the experience like of going in and buying the records of the band when they were living in style? I mean, that must have been tripped out to know that they were. I mean, was Big Pink the kind of place that would you go up there for concerts when you were that age, or you didn't go?
No, I didn't even really. I never went there or nothing. I didn't go there until like the late '90s when somebody from Finland wanted to come over and look at it. I never went over there. Those guys would show up every once in a while, sit in, or we'd be in a bar at Deanie's, and Richard would sing around with the piano, and Rick, of course, would always be out singing, and so it was a really local. The plumber knew Danko and the electricians, and everybody knew each other back then. It is a small knit town, but it was a cool scene, I was lucky to grow up in it and be so influenced by all these groundbreaking musicians, from John Hall to Buzzy Featon to Butterfield to Sanborn to Van Morrison. All these people were all living here and making music that changed the world, and influenced me greatly.
Why did you choose to go to? I mean, to me, there's still a lot of nasty, really, really heavy players in Nashville. But what was the?
Yeah.
Did you want to learn that style of music? What were your motivations? Why did you move there?
Well, I did that album with Robert Lee, and Ben Keith was on it, the pedal steel player.
I want to ask you something. There was okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Ben Keith.
Yeah.
I mean, I just connected with Bill Keith. You're not talking about the banjo player, Bill Keith.
No. Ben Keith. He produced the Neil Young records, Harvest, and he was with Neil all his life.
Wow.
Really.
Wow. Okay. Oh, right on.
Yeah, beautiful, big guy, and big influence. So he was producing the Robert Lee record, and then I guess got in a fight with his old lady. She chopped his pedal steel into with an axe. So he moved in with me at my place, and I had an old Impala, and he said, "Let's go to Nashville, find some work." So I said, "Come on, let's go then." And we drove. I drove down. He took the ride, and we both started working.
Well, wait, hold on. This is very important because it will show how things may or may not have changed. When you got there, where did you go to seek work?
There was a singer-songwriter named Billy Ray Reynolds. He's written a lot of songs for people. Ben knew him, so we kind of ended up staying out at his farm. I was only like 22 or so, I don't know, really young, and then Ben, we did some sessions with him, and then Ben got a gig. I think he was working with some of the Outlaw guys, and not too long after that, Ben got a gig with Neil Young. I went down to that session, and they cut some tracks, and I was pretty interested. The bass player who was producing it at that time had a bottle of champagne on ice and his bass in one hand behind the board. I forgot his name now. I don't know if he's still alive.
Well, Billy Ray Reynolds, is that his name? This guy?
Billy Ray Reynolds was this songwriter that we first started working.
Oh
with.
my God, these guys are the unsung cat. So he just was like, yeah, you guys, you were playing. What kind of guitar were you playing at that point?
I had that old Telly, that my 52 I still play,
mm-hmm.
and I just went down there with very little money, and we added his pad, and then Ben got to work with Neil, and then Ben got the gig with Neil, and stayed with him right until he died, and up until like 3 or 4 years ago.
Unbelievable.
And I started working with songwriters again around Nashville, and got a gig with Johnny Paycheck. I ended up living with me and Jimmy Day, another great pedal steel player that was a groundbreaker. Like, there was Ben Keith, Jimmy Day, Buddy Emmons, and a few others I can't remember.
I think we got to throw Buddy Cage in there.
Yeah, these are the first guys,
yeah.
And I was living with Jimmy Day at the time, and Jimmy Day said, "Well, I'd get us a gig." And we went down to Printers Alley, and Johnny Paycheck had a club down there, and we got up on the stage around 1 in the morning, or midnight or something, and we played with him. He goes, "All right, get in the van. We're heading to like fucking New Mexico or something right now." So we jumped in the van on the bean bags and went on tour, and
wow,
that was really insane. But I stayed down there in Nashville and worked with different songwriters and learned how to record and again backing up the song, and then ended up leaving there and going to, I don't know, I think I went out to LA for a little bit, which didn't go well. It was hard to find work, and came back and went to Atlanta to work at Access Sound Studios and put a rhythm section together. Harvey Brooks came down as a studio manager and musician.
That's beautiful.
he was the band leader for the recording team, and Richard Bell. So we had this great rhythm section, and I worked down there in Atlanta, and then of course played all the clubs with a band. And that's where I really honed my chops. Is in Atlanta at the time in the '70s, you could play again 5 nights a week, 4 sets a night in a month in each room, or 2 weeks.
Unreal. 5 nights a week, 4 sets a night for a month.
Yeah, in each room. So we'd book it up like that, and you could. That's how you really learn how to play the instrument, because I think, and I was playing all kinds of music, R&B and blues, rock and roll stuff. So you really learn how to play your instrument. And I don't think young people can have that opportunity like that anymore.
They don't, and also I think maybe there are certain towns, but I think also the idea is that, I don't care if it was in Boston in the Combat Zone with the burlesque clubs, and there were organ trios with strippers and that, they were gigs, man. You were getting paid. The philosophy now is that it's just music, so it's just art. It doesn't warrant any money. And that's the thing where it's like, people are paying to play now. That's the depressing part about it, because really there were enough people that understood that. There was a lot of musicians that made a living doing just what you did. And on top of that, you were able to hone your craft. That's the other thing. You weren't holed up in a room somewhere with headphones on,
No, you had to get out and play, learn all kinds of play with R&B bands, and play soul music, play straight rock and roll, country. I just wanted to absorb and play as much as I could, and backup songwriters, learn how to record in the studio, which is a whole different approach. I just wanted to learn as much as I possibly could, about music. I would study at home, like the latest record of somebody, and learn a style and transcribe it. In the early days, I just put a quarter on a thing and slow down a record for a nickel. But not like the kids today. They have everything. They got videos and a lot of information. Maybe too much, but basically playing live is really how you learn how to. You end up finding your own style and your tone and touch on the instrument, and that was a long-winded way to tell you how I got it.
No, that's the long. This is my show.
I got it the hard way. It's the only way you really learn how to play it.
Well, I have some. So within that long question, there were some other questions that popped up, and the first one was, could you pick a certain tune from the band that when you first heard it, the lyrics, what was it about? What makes a good song?
What makes a good song? Well, boy,
lyrically, like what I'm saying is, like, what? Explain how it fits together.
The band, it had just this special feeling. It's kind of like, because it came from this area, and this kind of Woodstock sound and Woodstock area, it just made me feel at home. Something that the lyrics touched you in a way where, when you hear Richard Manuel sing "Whispering Pines," you might think of, somebody that you lost, or something that was close to home to you, and the band had that deep soul feeling to me, and reminded me of. It would touch people in different ways. It reminded me of home.
Do you think that? But not all songs are good songs. They don't all touch you like that. But that doesn't make There's a lot of you've done a lot of seen.
There were stories. They King Harvest has surely come up.
My favorite tune. I just you know what it is? It creates images.
They were stories. They were American
exactly.
Right, and really this songs like Up on Cripple Creek and but even the weight, take a load off, and they were. I met a lot of those people down there that are in those tunes that they were friends with Levon. That lyrics. I met a lot of those characters.
Are you kidding me? That is so. That is.
That a lot of those lyrics came from Levon's friends and stuff. It was people that Levon knew, and Robbie met through Levon.
I mean, I was just playing.
A lot of characters.
I just interviewed Toussaint last week. I just interviewed Alan.
I read that. It was very good.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, the interview was interesting. Is that he really helped them with life as a carnival, and it just there's. I guess I always measure it by the fact, like, I mean, I wasn't even alive. During that time, but that staying power. When I listen to that sophistication of the horns,
it's great.
It's great. And what was eye-opening to me, or what is interesting to me, Jim, is that in the sort of pop world of The Last Waltz and This Wheel's on Fire and all this stuff, like you get the impression you know that Levon and Robbie had some disagreements, and I just look at it and I say, Robbie Robertson knew he was the one that found Toussaint. I always assumed it was Levon, but Robbie was the one that called the sheriff's department down in New Orleans and was like, "Hey,
that's great."
and
that was interesting.
I just find it like when they were see, and that's the thing. It wasn't once the California band. It was never. It was that I think that most special thing is that Woodstock amalgamation of the band at that time, which there was so much positivity and there was so much creativity. And there was just this open space to do it. And yeah, I bet you were on Cripple Creek with Rick Danko and he found that bass line, I mean, to me, that's magic. But it also proves that that magic is all around us all the time. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, that drum beat really defines the tune, too.
That's true.
That drum beat that Levon did, Levon was such a driving force, his heavy, just strong personality, and I mean, in the great songs, Robbie wrote amazing tunes, great guitar riffs, but I think a lot of those stories and people he met through Levon, like I did, I met so many people, and it was all really through like Levon was a conduit to, meeting all these characters, and a lot of characters, and he loved characters.
Absolutely,
he was a character himself for sure, but he loved crazy characters. He got a kick out of it, and I think a lot of it, all those guys were, Levon brought me down south, and I met all these people, and I'm sure
you got to meet like
a lot of those stories came from that.
Yeah, that's just I always consider it North American roots music because obviously the band came from Toronto. Garth came from Toronto. You want to spend time to? I've been watching these clips of you. I wish I could come see you and Garth play live. I mean, what was that? Did you remember the first time? Was the first time you played with Garth when the band was put back together?
Yeah. When I joined the band in '85, Garth had moved back, and the very first time I played was they had there was a club called the Getaway that me and Levon were playing. I had a country band, and I called it the Stetson Brothers, and Levon would come down.
Oh, this is so awesome! This is.
We had some funny names like Levon was Loveless. And I forgot what we had names, and those guys would come in and sit in. And then I was also playing at the same place with Levon All-Stars. And but then Levon said, well, we're going to go on the road. Why don't you come down? We're going to play down here. Richard's back and Garth, and we're going to play it down at the Getaway tomorrow night. I said, sure, I'll come down. And I sat in, played all night with the original guys, with Manuel and Garth and Rick and Lee. And then they went off. They had their first tour with Crosby, Stills, Nash, and they had the Cates, who Levon was totally close with. And
right.
And so they were out. I think they were out there a week with him, and they said, you know, they asked me to come. They didn't want to have two bands. I mean, it didn't make sense, I guess. So they said, well, let's get Jim out. So that's when I joined. And the first gig with Garth was at the Getaway. Really, the second gig was in front of about 30,000 people, opening up for Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
No, yeah. So, that's this. There's just so much, man. This is
a week later.
So they,
more rehearsal.
But they. I mean, the Kate. I like the Kate brothers, but they wanted to. And why do you think that they brought you in? I mean, there's no charity cases. I mean, at the end of the day,
there was. You know, it didn't. I think, you know, basically it didn't make sense to have a full Kate Brothers band and 4 original band guys in one big group. It was, they wanted it to sound like the band, you know. So I think it made maybe financial sense, also musical sense. Levon knew that it made sense to just have one guy, and they weren't, you know, they didn't know me until that night I played with them. Really, I mean, only Levon knew me, really, and Rick. I had done some shows with Levon and Rick.
So you felt a little comfy, but Richard and Garth, I mean, the first, you know what's so crazy, Jim, is that this is the full circle. I mean, you know, a while back I got some burned CDs, March 2nd, 1985, The Getaway, Socrates, and I'm like, and there were, I didn't know even at the time. I was, you know, I was just a babe in the woods, and I didn't really look at the personnel. I just assumed it was and then for me to discover that you're on this, and I mean, it's one of the, I don't have many CDs left, really. I collect mainly vinyl. It's one of the few shows I had. And that was the coolest part, is that cats were there, and they were right up front. I mean, that place was just a bar.
Yeah. It was a big old bar that we used to play music in. Good times. But that was the first time I played with all of them, and that pretty much changed my life, you know. And I owe it all to Levon, really. I mean, his confidence in me and Rick, you know, that we had done some shows, me, Levon, and Rick, previous to that, and I had been playing with Levon. But you know, for Levon to bring me in, there's a lot of the guitar players they could have taken in this country, but I just happened to be there at the right time, I guess, and that's the way those guys were kind of, they worked like that. It's all about the music. What was the,
okay, so here's this is fascinating. So Levon, you guys, you know, like, you were acquaintances, knew each other in the early 70s. Then, you know, fast forward 10 years later, do you remember the first time he caught you at a gig and was like, holy crap, Weider, man? Like, when did he pivot and just, it was, because at that point it's all nature, you know, when he...
I don't know, you know, really, actually Artie Traum, Happy Traum's brother, who's passed now, couldn't make a gig with, Levon was doing these gigs at the Lone Star and Levon Helm and the All-Stars, and couldn't do it. He said, well, get Jim Weider, because I had moved back to town and from Atlanta, and Levon called me up. I went down and played a show with him at the Joyous Lake at the time. And then we started playing together all the time after that, you know, doing Levon Helm shows. And then it was Levon, me, and Rick. And then Richard moved back, and Garth, and then that's kind of how it went, you know.
Sure.
Kind of happened like that.
I was going to say, can you explain the closest thing that did you work with Jesse Winchester at all?
No, I sat in with him once, but I never really worked with him.
I was going to ask you about...
I loved his stuff, man. I just loved his singing, and
yeah, no, I mean, it just... I guess I brought it up because I wanted to know about... You talked about the being in Atlanta and being able to play... you need to know a lot of standards. I mean, you needed to know a lot of tunes, and you had to be put in a lot of different situations. And I was hoping you could talk about, like, what was the closest thing? Did you play any stone jazz gigs? Did you ever play with any jazz cat? Did you wind up in a club like that, or what was the?
No, I really can't play jazz. I would be the first to tell you that.
No, man, I like it. Yeah.
I just, Satin Doll and all that stuff. It just didn't do nothing for me.
Right, right.
I tried in the early days when I was developing stuff, and I got to, I kind of wish I had put more time into it, but I did get to learn something that was really cool. Is when I was in Nashville, I became good friends with Lenny Breau.
Oh, my God.
He
Heavy dude.
Amazing, just amazing. And anytime he played, and then I ended up, going over to his house and taking some lessons from him. And he showed me like the latest Jerry Reed lick or something Chet Atkins just showed him, and he showed me how to play with Forrest, and I would have liked to really studied with him. That I wish I could have done a lot longer. Then I moved away. But
was he? I'm curious about this.
A little bit.
Was he capable of? Do you think he was an effective teacher? Because who loved Lenny Breau was Amos Garrett. Was obsessed.
Yeah.
I mean, obsessed with. And then he said that like towards the end of his life, Lenny was just like playing these like bowling alleys. Like he was in that. I'm just saying he was a good teacher for you. You liked him as a teacher.
Well, I liked him because I was in that,
right.
Like I could relate to him. He was such a really, really beautiful person, and we became friends. Like we would be teaching me something, and then all of a sudden he'd stop and go, listen to the birds. And he'd stop.
They're beautiful.
And the birds would be in the same key. And then he'd start playing, and then I'd just go along with it.
Oh, my God.
That was a good period of your life,
Woo.
People took time to listen.
That's right. They took time to listen.
You got to listen to the birds too.
Why do you? Why in hindsight? Why do you wish you invested a little more time in jazz? I mean, does it affect?
Well, I would have liked to learn more. I mean, especially from him.
Right.
I really like that. Forrest McCoy Tyner style. He had such amazing on both hands, the right hand and the other hand. His harmonic knowledge, I would have liked to learn a lot more from. And if you study jazz, you learn a lot more about harmonic knowledge. Just to have, because in some of the things I do that aren't band rootsy stuff, or I'd like to stretch out, and I kind of stretch out the only way I know, but there's so much more knowledge out there. You never stop learning.
Jim, can you talk about the way? I think that was probably more the idea is like how today do you as a mentor or even just a band member? I mean, there were no schools. There were no curriculums. Guys were writing their own stuff. They were taking chances. They were obviously hungry. You were in the same kind of boat. But how do you work with younger cats? Do you see cats that, they don't need academia? Because so much now is like academic geared. And it's one of my reasons why I just think that like there's just very little. I mean, you go back, Bill Cosby, you blindfold him, and he could listen to 10 different drummers, Tony Williams throughout. He could name them all. Everybody had their own sound. You have your own sound. Why? Where is that individual sound today? Is it just? What do you feel about that?
I think I think there's definitely guys out there that have developed their individual sound. I mean, I can name one right off the bat. As far as a slide player, what's his name? He plays with. Used to play with the Allman Brothers. Really.
No, Derek Trucks.
Yeah, Derek Trucks.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
He's got his own sound that he's developed in style, and that's not easy to do. And he did it at a young age, and
you're darn right about that. Actually, yeah.
He's very amazing, and I think there's other guys coming up. I don't know if there's not a lot of them, and there's not a lot of places for them to learn to develop their style. But I can't think of anything else right now. Anybody else?
No, I think more to the point is what are the advantages of learning on the bandstand?
Well, you learn how to work with others. You can't just be up there blasting away. Like Rick would always say, you got to listen. You got to learn to listen. And Danko had it right. I mean, you have to learn to blend in and be able to work with other musicians. You can't just be a guy who flails away and practices all day and then can't get on a bandstand and doesn't know how to make music. Making music is working with other people and blending in and making the song work, whatever you're doing.
It's like working with Howard Johnson, right?
Yeah, I loved it. It's great.
The guy is lights out, man. I mean, all I can say is that he was playing with Taj Mahal and Archie Shepp in the same year in 1972. It was wide open. What a gift!
That's when I worked with him too. He was in that same record with Robert Lee, with Howard Johnson. And
you better tell me the name of this. I got to go find this out. It must be a $500. Well, what's the name of the Robert Lee and what?
It'll come to me.
All right. Well, can you take me back to like the day or how the whole thing with Richard Manuel, the day he committed suicide? Where were you, and how'd you guys? I mean, I was listening to a show today from the Catalyst in October, or maybe a little bit later, and like just listening to Danko talk to the crowd. There's like some apprehension, but I just, I mean, I never, just what was that like?
Yeah, it was a dark period. He just, it was sad that he did that. Me and Rick went down to see him, and he was up, just, he was drinking too much back then, and it was pretty horrible, very bad. I'd rather not elaborate on it, but it was a giant loss, as we all know. It really, really affected all of us greatly.
How did it affect you?
It was terrible. He was right, I was right above him. I was staying at the hotel right above, the room right above him. I had seen him earlier in the night with Rick. We were hanging out. So it was just horrible thing. Should never happen. But,
how did the
lost a lot of friends.
I mean, I only ask because part of my show is about resiliency and dusting yourself off. And I mean, I never met Richard, but I mean, you fall in love with him just listening to him play, and you can only imagine what it must have been like to, spend a lot of time with him, play live with him and together. And but you guys soldiered on, and it wasn't.
You know what? The music helps you soldier on. You get it back out and play music. That's always helped me when times of really loss and when you're really sorrow and really upset and sad and deeply hurt. Playing music has always helped, and I think that helped Levon and Rick and Garth, and I know it helped me to get through a loss.
Right. It's a blindside, can come out of left field. I did want to spend some time just, I've been trying to coordinate an interview with Weider, but you're busy. You got a lot of gigs. How do you stay busy, and where are you playing? In the next upcoming shows.
Well, we've got this band now that I put together with Randy from the band, Randy Charlante.
Mm-hmm.
It's called The Wait. And it's me and Randy and Byron Isaacs on bass and vocals, and Brian Mitchell from Levon's, those two guys from Levon's band on piano and vocals, and the great Marty Greb on sax, keyboards, and vocals. And so we're kind of carrying it on. We're doing songs, right from Big Pink and Basement Tapes all the way through Cahoots and Northern Lights. And we've got we've got a bunch of shows that's coming up starting next week.
Where are you going to be playing? Like, what kind of venues are you playing at?
We're playing, doing a college next week, and then we're going into Tarrytown Theater in Music Hall.
In New York?
And theaters and listening rooms. The Infinity, we're doing a Tarrytown Theater November 22nd, and Soap Pack in North Orange November 21st, and the Infinity Hall on the 28th, and someplace up by Boston. And of course, we'll do a ramble on pre-New Year's ramble December 27th, which will be great. So that's been going really good. You know what? It's been a pleasure to play these tunes again and do them right, and play them with people who've all worked with Levon and Rick and Richard and
what do you mean? What do you mean? Do them right?
Well, to be able to play the band's music, it's not exactly. You'd have to play with those guys before.
Right.
You really have to, because they had a certain way they played the drums and the way the vocal harmonies were and the way the keyboards would lay with the organ and the piano and where the guitar sat, and just the way you played the instruments and the guitar and to play them right properly. It's been a pleasure. We're doing tunes that I've never done with the band, like Looked Out Cleveland or The Rumor, or, stuff that we didn't do. We did The Rumor once in Arkansas when Richard Manuel was still with us, and we only rehearsed about 5 times in 15 years, I think.
You got warmed up on stage. You got warmed up on stage.
But these guys are great, and everybody really has a close kinship to everybody that was in the band or have worked with them. So to me, that makes a big difference.
Did you just as we wrap up part 1 here with Jim Weider?
Yeah.
Did you when you joined the band, did you have a chance to jam or get together with Jerry Garcia at all?
No.
Never.
We did the last show at Soldier Stadium with Jerry Garcia, and I think might have been '95.
That's right.
We did Soldier Stadium 2 nights in Chicago, and of course Richard Bell yells out to Jerry, "Hey Jerry, don't quit your day job!" And
oh boy.
Lo and behold.
Yeah, well, I mean, but you know what? Truth is that it could have happened in '86. It could have. I mean, it just the guy was. It was. I do know that Levon and the band it is interesting. You go back to the early '80s, around the time that you sort of when you first reconnected with Levon. Those 2 bands connected once in Syracuse, and then New Year's Eve they played together, and then actually in '84 in Toronto. Were you on that gig?
No, I didn't join until 1985.
Right.
That happened to be probably when they reunited for some shows with the Cates. I think that might have been it.
That's probably what it was. I looked at the Dead as a different sound, obviously, but a similar individualism of the band of the West Coast that they were of Woodstock.
Well, Working Man's Dead. I think the Brown album really influenced that record. I really like the Working Man's Dead album.
Wow, interesting. I've never heard that before. That's phenomenal.
I really think if you listen to the Brown album and then listen to Working Man's Dead, I think that was after the Brown album.
Well, I'm going to go do that between now and our next. I'm going to go do that exact thing, and I'll listen to the. So
I really felt like, wow, they sound a little bit like the band.
I wanted to touch on something with you. You had talked about the evolution of the intermeshing of country and blues with Jesse Ed Davis and Taj, and the Woodstock sound of the band. But I talked to a lot of the black musicians, a lot of jazzers, and I wanted to get your take on it because you were actually you were pretty much on the inside of the music scene, in the sense that you were experiencing it firsthand, and it wasn't like you were just collecting vinyl and sitting at home or something. But when do you remember? The line goes that Race Records. Eventually, there was a deal made to change that name to Rhythm and Blues. But then when Elvis started singing, people called that Rhythm and Blues. But when they found out he was white, they said, "Well, we can't call that, so we're just going to call it rock." And I'm not asking you to say is that true or not. But what I'm trying to say is when was the first time you ever heard a label for music being used?
Boy, that's a good question. Maybe when Elvis came out with that, I think he was on the Ed Sullivan Show. I was just a little kid when he did that, and I think it might have been like when Ed Sullivan was a big thing. That he really brought the music to the masses, and that's where I got to hear. Like, hey, we got to do rock and roll like the Beatles, and then I could barely. I was very young, maybe 5 or 6 when Elvis was on, but I remember seeing him and being totally in love with it. Even when I was really young, whenever that was, 7, I don't know. But that's probably where I heard it. The terms was on maybe on Ed Sullivan Show.
Like the term rock and roll, like that, was that maybe the first?
Rock and roll.
Wow. I mean, because that to me is one of those fascinating things. And then, I mean, in Woodstock, were there a lot of bookstores where you could go and buy vinyl? And would you go in and just, there'd be like Ornette Coleman followed by Canned Heat, like there was no...
Not too much. There was a little news shop in town, and that had records in it. And then in Kingston, which is not 10 miles away, there was a bigger store like Big Scott, I think it was called. It was kind of like a big department kind of store that had records. And there was J.C. Penney's, So there was a few things, but it wasn't like at least in the early 60s, mid-60s, it wasn't a lot. There was a few stores. And then, in the 70s and late 60s, then there was a little record shop, of course.
I guess what I'm getting at is like the idea that if in alphabetical order, you could find Ornette Coleman and then Canned Heat behind it. There wasn't like a jazz section or a blues section. I'm just trying to figure out when you first became aware of the fact that these barriers were going up in music known as labels. Like when that really became to you like...
Oh, when they started labeling everything.
Yeah, really heavy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure, really. I really don't know. It might have been in early 70s when all that stuff started happening.
I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out... I guess what I'm really trying to wade through here is to figure out... how much creative control the band had on their albums. Just as an example, that they're an example of a group, because it seemed to me that there was this time where the record companies were making a lot of money, but because the musicians themselves were making up the rules, the bean counters didn't really know what they were doing, so they just left them alone. And so that was that period of time when you were in that bar and you heard Chest Fever, and I just, from a musician, again, you were still trying to grow your own career. So it's not like you were like sitting around like, analyzing this stuff. But today it's all about like, you hear, this is an R&B singer, and then they put it on and it's like it doesn't sound like anything. And everybody has their own interpretation of these labels, but these labels have really, in my mind, created this, where there was so much elasticity in music, it's made it so rigid. And I just, to me, I'm just...
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, back then, Gil Evans was doing something with Jimi Hendrix, or
exactly.
was going to start doing some stuff, and everybody was interplaying. Miles Davis was using electric guitar players and stretching out. I mean, the first stretching out into the rock, putting rock players in his group, and it was. I remember those times as I was listening to all that stuff, and people were experimenting with mixing genres. There was no like, oh, I'm just a jazz player, or I'm just oh, you're a jam band. I mean, the real jam bands were way in the 60s. The Cream was a jam band.
Right.
They would stretch out.
Right.
And they would take people on a journey, and that's a jam band. What they've labeled jam bands now are guys playing bluegrass, and they have a guy on maybe, I don't even know if they have a guy on a snare drum with some feathers. I don't know.
No, it's so true. I mean, it's been pigeonholed, and it's not
jamming.
No.
That's not taking people on a trip or somebody leading the way and then everybody following, and you take people on a journey, So it's all labeled now, and it's all, well, we can start whining and complaining with the radio is run by one guy in the middle of the Midwest, and and if you're Britney Spears and somebody else, maybe you'll get on it.
To me, it's like Jerry Wexler or, anyone. It just seemed opportune. Billy Mundy was on Rhinoceros. A band like Rhinoceros today, they were able to put out 2 or 3 albums on a major record label. It just seemed like there were the people that were calling the shots. Also, there were opportunities for cats to create identities at that time. I don't know if that exists anymore. I'm sort of just a baby.
I don't know either. And I mean, I've been doing, besides the Wave now, but I've been doing this band, Project Percolator, Jim Weider's Project Percolator, which is groove with electronica and all instrumental, and that is like about as most difficult thing you could tackle. The band is monstrous. Rodney Holmes on drums, from Record Brothers Santana to Avi Bortnick, who produced John Schofield and some Uber Jam stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Great bass player, and it's really left brain from what I've been doing, and I've been out there for about 8 or 9 years with it, but it's a difficult task. I mean, maybe 40 years ago, I'd be doing big theaters, but guys, great musicians like Steve Kimmock and all these cats are, they're lucky to get work because a lot of people just don't support it anymore the way people used to support music. And you can't get it on the radio. So that's out.
Can I ask you about, I don't need you to speak, personally about it, but support. When you say support, what was supported before that isn't now? Is it just the idea, paying people or where is that support? What is the kind of support that you're referring to? Well,
there's two. First of all, radio stations, FM radio in its heyday, when it wasn't controlled by the big corporate, somebody out in the Midwest saying this is all you're going to play.
Right.
Used to play the whole sides of records. Jethro Tull came out with a record, or John Prine. They'd play the whole side. Holy God, I got to go see this. Van Morris and Tupelo Honey. You can name it. World-changing records, and that's not available anymore for the musician. And then as far as our generation got older, so they don't go out as much. But the younger generation, they are. I don't think they support live music the way they did, and one of the reasons, I believe, and you can tell me wrong, you would know more maybe, is MTV is just full of like reality shows, sneaker ads, and whatever. It used to be a time they'd play at least not live stuff, but videos of bands. But in our day, in the 70s and earlier, and 80s, there was live concerts done. Kirshner, getting people excited about live music on TV. Oh man, let's see who's playing. Let's see Aerosmith, the band, Bob Dylan, the live show concert. You're getting younger people exposed to live music. That to me is not happening at all. And the masses are on. The masses are connected to their computers So, and there's all sorts of limits, thank God, but there needs to be, 20 of those shows around the country. And that, to me, is a big problem, because younger people go, one guy told me at the grocery store, I said, man, you're going to the high school dance? He goes, oh, we don't have that. I said, well, if I want to hear, I said, well, live band? He goes, if I want to hear a live band, I'll go on YouTube, and why would I?
Mm. Well, no, I mean, you're right. You're spot on. I mean, again, I'm one of those cats who I'm really more in love with you guys as musicians. Obviously, the music is part and parcel with that. I just love the idea of seeking. And, I have a dear friend, the skipper, Henry Franklin. He's considered the godfather of music in Southern California. Played with Hugh Masekela and, just Grazing in the Grass, was on the bass player on that. And, I've gone out and visited him a couple times. And, it just, what it comes down to is that he went to China for a 6-month engagement, trio jazz, in the middle of kind of a third world town. And he's playing 182 out of 186 nights. And he said it was weird because he'd be up there and they'd be swinging, and all the cats were just staring at their phones. It's like that is because, I mean, when you listen back, even to the recordings that were made of whatever Little Feat shows, or, I mean, you can hear people were tuning in. Now it's more about tuning out. And obviously with the digital technology increasing, people are like, yeah, I can just sit in the creature comforts of my home and listen to stuff as if that's sort of supposed to replicate the live music experience. And I agree with you about MTV. It's more about it's all about show over substance. And that, to me, is that's the crux of it for any real musician. Was there a particular FM station that you remember where there was a guy named Harry Abrams that had a show from, on a clear night, it was from New York all the way down to Delaware, and he could put on 6 hours of Thelonious Monk if he wanted to. Was there a station in Woodstock that you got off on?
Well, there was, in the early days, we could actually get WBAI from New York, and they played really hip shit, it was really cool. Then there was the Woodstock Music Station in its very early days when it wasn't so commercialized. That was cool, but you try to get those off stations, like BAI, some stuff out of Manhattan that was really playing stuff you would never get a chance to hear. And I think the younger people need to be exposed to all that and to the live experience again. The jam band circuit is the last saving grace for that, but you try to go see a band now like Coldplay, and your ticket at the Garden is going to be no less than $300. So when I was a kid, you could go to the Woodstock Festival for $7. And so it's the greed, the corporate greed, and we could go on and on about this. It's really notched out younger people. They don't have the money. Majority of them don't. So they don't get to see bands that really are life-changing, that could inspire them to play music and go out and see more concerts. Even in the big places, they're just charging. It's just really out of hand, and somebody should start a TV show that just promotes live music again.
Well, my hope is that when I go up for this interview with Doug Herzog, that I can pitch him to say that I want to do a roundtable TV show on MTV with live music and interviews with all the musicians that came up during that era. To me, that's
or make up a new name. Doesn't have to be MTV,
Well, no, whoever. I guess my point is, like, the guy is connect. That's my angle is like, hey, man,
good for you.
That's it. Because you need to. All right, I wanted to. You said something last time, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna let you expound on it. Talk about being on the road with Johnny Paycheck, and just give me some insanity. Give me a story about about those road trips?
I can tell you, but since you got that guy, you're going to have that guy on the phone. Pitch him to do it right out of Levon's barn in Woodstock.
You know what, man?
He's popular as you can get. It's already laid out. You just got to bring in a satellite truck. Do it.
You know what? I'd be up there with a sleeping bag. And I mean, this is where it all happened. I mean, it's all a confluence. The point is, I'm not speaking to some guy who's a bottom line bean counter. I'm speaking to a guy who had his own college radio show and would go to Dorchester in Massachusetts to bring in ska reggae artists when reggae was exploding in the 70s. His mom took him to, I mean, the guy is entrenched in real music. So, I mean, that's it, and it's about being bold, and I mean, to me, it's like part of that issue is like kids are just like, they're scrapping money together just to get a ticket and I think that was the beautiful part of it too. Do you know a guy named Jim Kweskin, the Jim Kweskin Jug Band?
Yeah, I know of him. I didn't know him.
He just talked, I was listening back to our interview, and he talked about literally just hitchhiking across the country, all these towns, Bloomington, Madison. I mean, you go on and on and on. You wind up in these towns, and there were these just incredible pockets of musical activity. You could get, mobility was easier, travel was easier, and then the ability just to find places where music was played and to, just to meet people, that's done. And I don't know how you rebuild. I mean, something new is going to have to come, but this old system, it's completely discombobulated. But that's why I think it's important that in the 21st century I can actually reach out to people like you who can offer not solutions, but you can promote the ideas of the percolator. I mean, just like the idea that you're fusing all that stuff together, the electronica, the blues, the country. I mean, you're that kind of band. You're that kind of person that I want to be able to, for people that are seeking. It's not, you don't have to seek very hard anymore, Jim. You know that. I mean, you can go and everything's pretty much right at your fingertips. You can do whatever you want, and it's real quick, and it eliminates that seeking. But if you don't seek, then you're going to wind up, whether or not you're conscious of it, you're going to get stifled pretty quickly. And I think that's a dangerous. That's just, to me, it's not going to allow music to breathe either. But no, tell me about the
live concerts on TV for the masses. So people can turn on a TV and see like free live bands like Don Kirshner used to do, like performing really live, 4 or 5 tunes each, and they get to experience new bands, younger bands, great classic artists, everything, and expose, all these younger generations to playing live and performing. It's just not out there. There's lots of YouTube, but to see it let's see it on TV. Be fantastic.
Yeah, and I also think, Weider, I mean, it's an interesting thing because you had these fearless guys like Mingus and Miles. They were not beholden. Today, you might get someone with as independent or sort of eclectic personality as Jimi Hendrix or Miles, but they're immediately starting to be managed by multiple people, and in turn, they turn them into some caricature of who they really are. So you don't get the real thing. That's the other part of it. It's just to me, the awakening or the conscious awakening will be when you start to see cats, and it's already happening. But when the first couple of people, real fearless, unafraid, the no shtick, it's not about what you wear. It's really that whole. That sort of personality, I mean, turning your back to the stage or whatever, but those guys were not being molded into something. They were doing what they wanted to do. And so it's just very hard for people to sort of grow into themselves when they're being managed and told, well, we need to sell this, we need to sell this many, we need to sell thousands of records, not hundreds, but thousands or millions. And so therefore we're going to market it a certain way, and we're going to make it very shallow. I mean, anyway, we can go off, but no. Let's go back to the exact opposite of that, which was Johnny Paycheck.
Oh, that was a very brief period in my life.
But you said that it was the road was insanity, and I just kind of wanted to know if you could relay a story about insanity.
Well, he would drive in his Cadillac, with a driver, and we were, we got the gig, like I said, at like 1 a.m, jumped on some bean bags, me and Jimmy Day and a couple other guys, and we took turns driving, following them all the way out to Texas, and we were playing these crazy-ass Air Force bases and clubs with toothless and ruthless people. And, he was jacked up really good, and I said, holy shit, this is really good and nuts.
Yeah, right. But you didn't have to worry. You could just be yourself. You were relaxed, because that was like Richard Green with Bill Monroe. He was like, we'd play in a barn in front of 5 people with 3 teeth, But it's, that's missing. I mean, as far as I'm concerned. So tell me, it was just, you're like, this is crazy good. But it didn't last. How long did that actually go on for?
It wasn't that good, really. It was like, it was nuts, and we'd drive from one place to another, and I think I ended up getting behind the wheel and doing about 95 in the van and getting fired. He didn't like that, and I wanted to get out anyway. It wasn't my cup of tea.
Right.
But it was a trip, and it's all part of the path, I guess.
Did you meet was there a logical connection to the next chapter during that time with him? Did you go to L.A. after that, or did you stay in Nashville?
Yeah, I think after that I got in my car. I was working with Lee Clayton with
Sure.
Jimmy Day, and we were kind of doing something like Dire Straits ahead of its time. Lee Clayton wrote Ladies Love Outlaws, and we had this band that was like a rock band with his songs, who was really cool songs. And then we got into the studio to cut with this really great producer, and he just turned. He said, "I'm not going to do any of the tunes we're doing. I'm doing all country." And I just got in my car and packed up my guitar and drove straight to L.A. like 5 hours. Said, forget this place.
Wow.
I was going to Nashville for me.
Ooh.
So then I went out there and, had a hard time out there, though. At least Nashville, I could work a lot. And I didn't find a lot of work out there enough it brought me back home to Woodstock and then went back to Atlanta. And that's where I worked. And was in a rhythm section with Harvey Brooks and Richard Bell. And I played, like I said, I played down there. That was really where I got a lot of time in playing clubs, and honing in my chops, as you call it.
Can you talk about the feeling of playing with Harvey Brooks? What makes him such a great bass player, aside from just his incredible time?
His time and his touch, and he's one of the all-time greats, and he was such a nice guy, and his time and his touch on the bass, every note was always just even. He's done so many records, and I learned a lot by just listening to the way he would play. His dynamics were so even. How he would lay tracks down. I was really. It was just an honor to play with him, and a great guy.
Yeah, no. So when you say he moved down there, were you guys playing every week, multiple gigs together? Were you and Bell and him?
No. He ended up managing the studio Axis Sound, Mile and the Favors old one, and we were on a salary as session players that whatever came in, and then on at night we would. I had a band with Richard Bell. Harvey wasn't in the live thing. And we had a band down there, and it was called Full Tilt. And we would play, 5 nights a week, 4 sets a night, 6 nights a week, a month in each venue for years. There were several other artists we backed up while we were down there, but mostly, just clubbing it hard, at night.
Full Tilt, would you say it was like a progressive rock kind of thing?
Yeah, it was rock and roll, R rhythm and blues.
See, we're using labels too. So look at me. Here I am using labels.
Yeah. No, it was just just good old rock and roll and rhythm and blues stuff. So I learned a lot about Southern players and slide down there, and great singers, a lot of great vocalists in the South. I always found, and so it was a great experience for me. Finally, I moved back and worked with Robbie Dupree. Got me to come back. He had a hit out at the point, Steal Away, and then right after that, touring with him, I got with Levon, and the rest is history. I mean, I stayed with them for 15 years.
What else can you elaborate? You said Levon took you down south to meet some cats, but how would you describe the Southern cat? Like, what do you mean, their mindset or their type, style of play? Can you talk a little bit about that, considering you're not from there?
Well, yeah. I mean, when we would go down and do in his hometown area, there's a blues festival in Arkansas, and I think we did one of the first ones, King Biscuit. But then we would meet all the characters down there, and I got to meet some of the old players that were still playing that were from that area. But when you get down there, you realize that it's a whole other world down there, down on the Delta down there. Just the way the music that you see, oh my God, Robert Johnson was here, and E.B. King. We got to meet Albert King. James Cotton, of course, was from that area, and you get to see that really all that's such where all the music came from. A lot of the music, all the blues greats, all came from that area down there in Mississippi and Memphis and Arkansas. That area was so rich. I can see where Levon's blues influences came from, and rhythm and blues, Jimmy McCracklin, and all the guys that we talked about. Got to meet a bunch of them.
And he knew at that time when he was down growing up down there, he didn't know them then. He just, once he became part of the band and they would go back down, that's when
I think he met Sonny Boy Williamson and would see all these guys that at that time they were younger.
Wow.
Wow. So he was really influenced by a lot of those players.
Yeah, you're really talking about before these guys went up the Delta, Mississippi to Chicago. I mean, this is way before chess. For Sonny Boy and things like that.
Well, during that period, I mean, let's see, when they go up to chess in the 40s or 50s?
Yeah, I mean, this is not in the pocket of Jake Feinberg. I just know that, I mean, Sonny Boy was, that was Levon's man, and I'm just trying to figure out if he was just a local entity at that point, or whether, those chess albums to me were, 50s, 60s, early 60s? I don't even know, but it
might have been. So, I mean, Levon probably met those guys in the 40s, when he was a teenager. Seen him play around town. Robert Nighthawk was around there. Maybe Earl Hooker came through. I don't know if he met Earl. I forgot to ask him about that. But fantastic, groundbreaking players. That really, really influenced him.
It doesn't matter whether it was the cats in New York, in the village with Blind Willie Johnson or Reverend Gary Davis, Levon with all the guys down there. It was something about these elder musicians that were just intoxicating to the younger white musicians, and I'm just. When you met them, not so much from a technical guitar point of view, but from a stage presence point of view, did they influence you as far as how they handled themselves, carried themselves?
Yeah, I mean, you watch James Cotton lead a band down there, and he was fantastic, and he would take, real powerful front singer and a harp player, and he would lead that band, and it was fantastic to be down there on a summer night in Arkansas and seeing these guys just rip the crowd up, you know, and just tear it up. I mean, and the same thing with Butterfield up here. He was a big influence. His harp playing and his attack on the harp, the way he'd lead the band, and then his attack on the harp was really, I think that influenced my guitar playing attack. One of the things, absolutely. It was a really powerful, like a freight train coming at you with notes. And you'd hold a note, bend it. I think that was a big influence, because those guys were, he's a guy I grew up listening to. You know, I might have heard James Cotton a lot more, but Paul Butterfield was a big influence for me, and the musicians he brought to town.
It was just, do you think that it was the idea of the propensity of the notes he was playing, or just the idea that he was able to take something pretty simple, but, you know, vary each one, you know, whether it was bending or, and how...
Bend the note and just stretch it out, and just, his attack was really powerful. You know, it was like big sounding, fat, and, you know, just fantastic. One of the greats, really, one of the greats, really changed music.
And just a great human, but that's the other part of it here, is the accessibility. The fact is, you knew him personally. Danko came in, would smile at you, and you knew these guys were like right in your face. I mean, when I talked to Cosby, he'd go see Dinah Washington, buy $1 Coke, sit at a bar, and her sweat would drip into his glass. I know we can't go back, but you knew these people. I mean, I just talked to this drummer in Los Angeles, and, you know, I mean, he'd go see Jimmy Garrison and Coltrane, and those guys would get off the stage and hang. I mean, they were humanity. Butterfield was a human being. He was a leader. Those are leaders, man. It's not driving around in some cavalcade with an entourage. It's like, they're right there. I mean, to me, that's kind of just hitting on it. You know, somebody can go out and go, you know, balls to the wall, and, you know, but yet, and they play it to the masses, and then they're done, and they're whisked off the stage, and you know, you're not going to see them again. You know, it's like the ego has real. I mean, that's the one thing that's amazing to me about Levon, and I mean, yeah, again, ego did surface, and eventually the original band, you know, dissolved, and then you came in as the next amalgamation. But those guys really understood that they were just a man, just like anybody else. And that's what I find most powerful, because they, like you said, used the word attack. It wasn't a vicious attack. It was just a big, fat, powerful, very inclusive sounding attack. Beautiful, you know, not in a negative connotation. And that's just unbelievable. And I think that's what you continue to do today. I mean, it's just the propensity of people that were doing it back then was just that much greater. There's not, you know, it's few, and that's why I think I wanted you to talk about this. How often do you do rambles? You have one coming up at the end of the new year. How do you decide when do you decide to do these midnight rambles?
Well, that's, you know, we've been doing them, you know, when somebody comes up with a project that, like, I've got a couple of different things I've done. One of them is, of course, the Wait that we're doing in December 27th. I just present it to Barbara O'Brien, who's managed Levon and who's helping manage the Ramble nights at the barn. And I had a thing called Masters of Telecast, where I did with Danny Korchmar and GE.
Oh, boy. Are you with Cooch?
Still do that.
Oh, my God. Korchmar's going to be up there?
So that was fun. We did a show up there and like that. So, you know, different people bring in projects. Larry Campbell will bring in the Ramble Band with something, or different people bring in project ideas, and if Barbara wants to do it, we put it together. It's a fantastic place to do shows. Just fantastic sound in there. So we cut all the last band albums up there, all live, you know, just live in the studio.
What do you think about Levon's daughter's drumming style?
Her drumming style?
Yeah. Because I forget who I was talking. No, Howard. I was talking Howard Johnson. I talked to him way back when. First of all, he said the thing about the Ramble things that crack him up is that after a show, people come up to him and say, "Was that a particularly burning night?" And he's like, No, not really. It's just kind of the par for the course. But people get so amped up to see you guys in that sort of small. That's how exciting it is for people because they're so not used to that kind of stuff. But then
it's great.
He said on the Dirt Farmer album, a lot of people don't know this, but a couple of the best tracks are the ones with Levon's daughter on drums.
That's fantastic. No, she can play some drums. You know what? And she grew up listening to her father, so, I mean, she's a natural talent. I love Amy, and she's got a new record, her first solo record coming out, and a great band, Amy Held Group, and I forget the name of it, Handsome Strangers. Byron Isaacs is in it and producing her album, so she's doing really well and singing better than ever. And yeah, she can play some drums.
Yeah, well, listen, Howard wouldn't just throw that out there for charity.
No.
I mean, he was saying, I think what he was getting at was just because we've all heard it. Booker T, Jones said it, and everybody said it. It's just, Dr. John said it. It's just, I mean, he had a style he had a style all his own. And so Howard was saying, the only one I know like that who sounds like herself or by her own individually is his daughter, Amy, and I just, to me, that's really quite, and she's only going to get stronger too, which is really exciting, actually, it's really a beautiful thing.
I'm very happy for her. She's really, really good person.
So I did some research, my friend. The name, this is, I don't know if you even have any copies of this album, but I believe the album that you were referring to with Robert Lee was called Escapade.
There you go. That might be it.
No, I think it is it, Howard. But it was released in '79, and you're on it. Howard's on it, and
right.
Ben Keith is on it. He's sitting on a sailboat with his shirt off, smiling.
That's it.
Yeah. How many copies you got of that out? You don't have any of these?
I probably have one somewhere.
This is a private stock Georgia. It says. Private Georgia folk rock.
Good research. I remember we had a song about Mexico, so we drank a bottle of tequila when we cut that one, and then had a song about whiskey, Be My Woman, and he drank a bottle of whiskey when we cut that. So
good. This is all a song about Kentucky, and you did bourbon. The whole thing is just fantastic.
It might have been, I don't know, but it was a pretty wild time. You can ask Howard Johnson about it.
Well, no, all I typed into, listen, for anybody out there, it's not that hard. You type in Robert Lee, Jim Weider, Howard Johnson, and that comes up. and then you type in LP. Make sure you type in LP, because I know that thing's never been released in any other format. It's quite awesome, and I really hope one day I run into it. Jim, as we wrap up here, one final question for you. Could you talk about a character that Levon turned Robbie onto that influenced a band song?
Well, I think we talked about, I would say, Anna Lee, that's in the Wait. Let me think on that, boy.
Well, I was going to say, last time you teased me with the idea of saying Levon loved characters, and many of the songs came from that. But we never. I was just thinking one. Well, because there are just W.S. Walcott, but I bet all these guys were just.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
This you'll like this.
Yeah.
I was. We had just got back from Portugal with Richard Manuel, and we went over there to a festival, and. We got back, and Richard says, "Come on, I want to accept an award up in Stratford, something where he came from, Stratford." So we jump in a small Piper plane, and then we get in a car, and we we rent a little Maverick, and he's doing 100 miles an hour up to his hometown, and he wanted to show me Niagara Falls first. So I said, okay, yeah, let's take a look at it. It's a big restaurant, and right at Niagara Falls, and it was just a little parking spot, but it was the perfect spot. He wanted to get in, so we pull in and back up, pull in, back up, and he's bashing his way in. Would hit the front car, hit the back car, hit the back car.
Man.
He bashed his way in. Everybody's kind of staring at us. I'm laughing my ass because there's the falls. So after that, we get up there. On the way, though, he told me a story. He said, that's where my car Dixie died, right there. And I said, really? He said, yeah, that's the night we drove old Dixie down.
Oh man! Oh man! You got to be kidding me!
You could win the one of those contests on TV.
No, I'm telling. When I start my show on TV, that's going to be the kind of that's brilliant.
So the night they drove old Dixie down, good possibility that idea might have came from Richard's old car that they left in the field there. He said that's where it was.
Boy,
and then, of course, the rest of it is all the great lyrics that Robbie wrote about the story. But isn't that funny?
Again, that's that. I could push you more because I could say that's an inanimate object, but that's still that's a good one. I dig that one a lot. But I just love the fact that I think that, the open-heartedness of Levon, the idea, the reason I believe that he just always loved to be surrounded by different people. I don't call them odd or weird or eccentric. They're just different. They're street people, like Bobby Charles loved, And that, to me, is what's missing. And I don't know necessarily if it's the artists, but they just, that's why I like being able to connect with people like you, man, because you don't need that. You don't want that many filters between you and real people. And I think
and that's the way Levon and Rick and they were just they treated everybody the same. And Levon, Rick, and Garth, and Richard, and they all just treated everybody the same, from the carpenters to the plumbers, and they were all very, very generous with their time. And I was very grateful to have known them all.
Man, thank you, man, for.
No problem.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Jake. Bye-bye.
Later, Jim.